This week in On the Go, we get the latest from HART, the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority's Justin Willits.
For our specific region, we got to get back to basics and just provide, frequent, reliable service.
And Nicole McCleary.
More people are choosing transit as a way to move around, especially if they know they can get there efficiently.
Hello and welcome to On the Go, the T-Barta podcast, where we discuss the latest in transit and transportation all across Tampa Bay. I'm your host, Chris Jadek, and we're honored today to be talking with two people who are working on some very exciting projects with HART, the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority. They are Senior Planner Justin Willits and Senior Project Planner Nicole McCleary. Welcome to you both.
Thanks. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I think our listeners would enjoy hearing a little bit about each of you. So let's start with a brief biography on Justin. Justin Willits joined HART about a year and a half ago in May 2019, but he is no stranger to Tampa, spending the first 7 years of his career in the private sector here. His background includes working on complete streets, transit operations, multimodal safety, bus stop accessibility, and creating transit master plans. Justin manages projects and performs coordination on short and long-range planning, both internally at HART, as well as with other local agencies throughout Tampa Bay. Justin, I know you're an advocate of transit and alternative transportation. Let me start by asking you why you see your work as so important and so meaningful to our community.
Thanks, Chris. So I think at the very minimum, transit is kind of the backbone for equitable transportation throughout any community. In a place like Hillsborough County, where we're still pretty short on resources, trying to get the most benefit to the most members of our community out of our transit system is really just what makes it so meaningful on a day-to-day basis for us. So I really kind of take that approach and then try to make the service as good as it can be for those who depend on it, and then try to make the service as good as it can be to try to get other people to ride it and see value in transit as well. That's always been the challenge in the Sun Belt. So try to apply that to Tampa and, make improvements where we can and keep striving toward an expanded transit network we all hope that we get to one day.
I think we share that philosophy. I think we're all working toward that. So well said, and I appreciate that. Now a little background on Nicole. Nicole McCleary is a senior project planner at the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, joining HART in August 2019, bringing with her more than 10 years experience in transportation and environmental planning. Nicole coordinates program activities with other HART departments, local governments, and other stakeholders. In doing this, she prepares and assists in transit studies, analysis, and mapping of transit services using GIS, as well as other special projects and project management. Nicole, I'll ask the same of you. Why is your work important, not just professionally, but also personally?
I definitely think that transit should be easy. It should definitely be a choice for people. We serve 55% minorities, and, in 2019, about I would say over half of our population was low income or ridership. So just trying to make it easy for people. They need to get where they're going in an easy, efficient manner. I don't believe it should take anyone 2 hours or more in 3 buses to get to work every day.
We have a lot to cover today, but before I get into those projects, I want to ask each of you for your thoughts on your incoming CEO, Adelaide LeGrand. We hope to have her on a future podcast, but for now, I'm sure each of you is looking forward to the experience and leadership she's going to bring to HART. Justin, I'll start with you first.
We share our board's excitement. We've heard some great things from her, and I had the fortunate experience of bumping into her at a conference a year or so ago in Vancouver for Railvolution. And she moderated a community streetcar coalition panel. So I was trying to brush up on streetcar stuff, which we'll talk about later. But she was really impressive then. Went out of my way to say hello to her and look forward to reminding her we've met when she gets on board. So really excited to get her in Tampa.
And Nicole, I'm sure you share the sentiment of getting a new leader on board.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We are excited to have her and looking forward to getting her on board and just sharing this opportunity with her. She has a lot of great experience, and we're going to be glad to have that here at HART.
Thank you. Well, most immediately, we've all had to adapt to new safety guidelines due to the COVID-19 pandemic. HART and all of its employees are to be commended for stepping up, making sure this crucial transit service has continued operating safely despite decreased demand. HART, as most all transit providers in our region and nationwide, reduced service earlier this year, but service has been coming back. And I understand there are some additional changes to the core bus routes come January. What's the latest on HART service?
We have gone back to full service with the exception of our express routes. That happened, I believe, November. Was it November 15th, Justin? Right. So, and then in January, we actually have a service modification. This came about due to financial restraints, just trying to ensure that we can provide the best service across Hillsborough County while still maintaining some sort of financial integrity, ensuring that, we're doing the best with the resources that we have. So that will happen January 24th, 2021. And we actually have 2 new routes within that service modification, which people were excited about. Some of our routes are going to be extended. Some of the times may change from 15 to 30 minutes. So there's a lot of big changes going on, but we did a lot of community outreach, and overwhelmingly, it was very positive. The community was happy about the changes that we were making, and we're looking forward to it.
Sounds good. And I imagine all of those changes, updates are probably available on your website. I believe that's gohart.org, correct?
Yes, everything is available on the website.
Excellent. Very good. Well, let's move on to some of the exciting projects HART is working on. And a good place to start is the Tampa Streetcar project. And last week's big news that FDOT is going to contribute $67 million toward an extension. The TECO Line Streetcar is well known to people who frequent downtown Tampa, but an overview for those who may not be as familiar would be helpful. How do you describe the TECO Line Streetcar to those who've not been on it?
The Tampa streetcar system is what most of us would call a historic streetcar. We have vintage streetcars operating out there that connect historic Ybor City through the Channel District to Amalie Arena and into the southern part of the Central Business District of downtown. It kind of follows the water line in parts of downtown Tampa, but it's a really nice ride from Ybor into downtown. And that's, I think that's the best way to really describe it. It's historically been mostly a tourism-based ridership generation to get people kind of in and out of downtown. It hasn't served true commuting hours until recently because FDOT funded some free service the last 3 years, coming up on 3 years, which really boosted ridership and made it more of a everyday tool for folks that wanted to use it. So you can use it early morning and late evening, and it runs 15 minutes all day. Ridership has really skyrocketed since they began that program. So it's becoming more of a transportation option and not just a transportainment option is what I've kind of thought about it historically. So it's becoming getting a lot more utility out of the resource.
We've been talking about an extension for, I think, years now. What is the proposed extension and what is the value of that?
So if you ride the streetcar now from Ybor through Channelside into southern downtown, the proposed extension would continue that north on Florida Avenue within a block of our Marion Transit Center as our busiest transit center in our network, and then up to Palm Avenue where it would turn around and come back down Tampa Street to get back to the Whiting Street station, which is the current terminus. And what that really would do is make it a more complete system. It kind of misses the core of downtown only by a few blocks, but it would really connect the entire piece of the Central Business District with a growing population in southern Tampa Heights. There's some riverfront CRA that has seen a lot of development. Actually, a repurposed old streetcar barn from 100 years ago has now been turned into a food hall, and there's a lot of mid-rise and pretty dense development going on up there. And I think the real value of the extension from a purely bus operation standpoint is that it can help connect our routes to each other and to downtown a little better and remove the need for us to take every route into downtown to one transit center and kind of act like the local mobility that is needed to accompany a larger bus network. So being able to move people around in the streetcar, bikes and scooters, it's just all part of the mix that we like to see, but can also have effects on the bus routing that feeds downtown, because we have such a good frequent extension to the streetcar that the bus system doesn't have to make every trip possible, because it's helped facilitated by the streetcar extension. So really long answer.
No, and it's very good. I appreciate the detail, because when I think of the streetcar, and I think because of the historic nature of it, it's seen as, well, this is a really nice, cool little touristy thing you can do to get around downtown area, but obviously has some real functionality and real purpose. And your explanation says, we see this not just as connecting more of our population to it, but it feeds the entire HART system. Is that what I'm getting from this?
Right. Yeah. And it makes, whether you're a commuter from East County, it makes that first mile, last mile in downtown, can make it a lot more seamless. And then some of those routes that, let's take, for example, like the McDill Express routes, they jump off of the crosstown and go on Jackson and Kennedy Boulevards, the state roads in downtown, and then get right back on. With a streetcar coming every 15 minutes, the connections and the utility of those express routes will become much more viable because of the circulation in downtown. So it has countywide impacts, even though it serves a very centralized location in the downtown core.
Now, I understand there are some caveats to the FDOT money. It's a very big piece of this puzzle, but there are some other hurdles you have to cross in order to take advantage of that. Tell me where the project stands now and kind of what the steps are that are going to unfold in the months ahead.
It's a bit non-traditional as far as federal transit projects go, but the state stepping up with their match first is a huge win in the process. What we really need now is for our local funding, which is going to be pretty much equal to what FDOT has committed, about $67 million. So we need, right now, that's planned for the transportation surtax money, also known as All for Transportation, AFT. So we're still waiting on a ruling from the Supreme Court about the legality of that tax and if we are going to get the money that we've all been paying for a couple of years now, that sales tax money. So it's in the pipeline. It's still moving through its phases. We have a commitment from the state, but now we need to come up with the local match. And then the federal government would then provide about 50% roughly to the 25% the state would add and the 25% that us, the locals, would come up with. So if all goes well, hopefully it would be 2024, 2025. I'm a little fuzzy on that because we keep having to maneuver things because we still don't know about our local tax. So it's kind of a moving target for us.
There are a lot of uncertainties. Certainly the tax is one of those. I think coming out of COVID-19, how we're going to, adjust budget-wise. I mean, local leaders on the city, county level have a lot of budget considerations they need to make. Our state tax revenue has gone down. So a lot of the answers to those questions remain to come as we pull out of this and see where we are in 2021. One thing I wanted to ask you about was I've seen sketches for the new streetcar, proposed sketches, look very futuristic. Are those just ideas, or if you get the funding, is that the direction you want to go? Because as it is now, it's very historic, but this looks a little more modernistic. And is that a definite direction or just a consideration at this point?
No, so it is a extension and modernization project. The plan is to modernize the fleet. I think we're planning to keep 2 or 3 of the older vehicles just because, it's very Tampa. So we definitely want to keep that flavor and have it for special events. There's actually an open air breezer car that doesn't have the sides on it. And it's really a great amenity to keep around, but we do want to modernize the fleet. I think the vehicles that are currently in the concept are twice the capacity, from like 100 to 225 passengers per vehicle. If you've ever been downtown for Gasparilla or a Lightning game, those things fill up, and we call it crush ridership in transit, and they're just overloaded. So we don't mind having the historic cars out there, but we definitely want to modernize, get some higher speeds too, so we can kind of improve the delivery of service, but also accommodate more passengers because we do have some big events, and there's a lot more residential coming in around the whole system. So, everyday users are going to keep growing and growing.
As we've seen from other cities that rely a little bit more on public transit, it seems public transit is a little more ubiquitous. People are used to taking transit to get places. And certainly that's one of our challenges. We need to make transit more available to people. And as we do, as they adopt it, we expect that demand to go up. And we're going to have the capacity to meet that demand, or it's not going to be that great experience. I'm sure you're thinking the same thing too. We don't want to overbuild, but if we are successful in indeed promoting this and putting this out there and making it useful to people, they're going to adopt it. And as they do adopt it, it has to continue to be a good experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like once we removed the barrier of it was a $5 round trip fare on the streetcar, we removed that barrier and you saw people flocking to it. Our all day bus pass is it's $2 one way and then $4 you can ride all day. So to get somebody who's already got a day pass on the bus to get off to use a streetcar that's $5 round trip, that's a big hit. Both it's great for tourists and people that have other options, but if it makes a ton of sense for like I said, the local network and everything else.
I think we talked about this. I touched about the time frame of it, and I believe you mentioned this before. But best case scenario timeline for the extension of the project, when we could actually be riding it. Were you saying like 2024, something like that, if all goes according to plan?
Yeah, I believe it'd be 24 or 25 at this point. But it's technically the city of Tampa. This is their extension project. They are the owner of the streetcar, and we're the operator. So the project's kind of in their court for now. Something that obviously lands at HART since we would be the operator, and the surtax funding, it does flow through us as the biggest recipient of that funding.
Well, some questions remain to be answered, of course, but certainly the news last week, FDOT's $67 million commitment. Congratulations on that. It's not the final piece of the puzzle, but as you mentioned, very important to move forward. And it's encouraging to all of us because as we see what's happening with COVID, transit ridership's changing. I think the nature of how we commute is in flux a little bit, but these projects need to continue moving on. So the streetcar project's a really good example of how HART continues to move forward. And I think we need to move forward as a region. Good luck on that project and congratulations on the money that FDOT's committed. And we will be supporting and working with you in any capacity we can to make sure that project comes through. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about bus rapid transit, HART's arterial BRT project, and alternative energy vehicles, the future of transit, not just worldwide, but right here in Hillsborough County. You are listening to On the Go, the podcast from the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority.
As Tampa Bay gets back to work, morning and evening commuters are also starting to crowd back onto local roads. Maybe you've been teleworking and aren't ready to restart the rush hour grind. If so, Commute Tampa Bay can help. Go to CommuteTampaBay.com and find out how someone else can drive you to work in a T-BARTA van pool. You'll avoid the aggravation of driving, make new friends, help the environment, and save up to thousands of dollars each year. Commute Tampa Bay. It's the smarter way to work.
Welcome back to On the Go. I'm Chris Jadek, joined by two guests from HART, Senior Planner Justin Willits and Senior Project Planner Nicole McCleary. Let's move on to another exciting HART project, the Arterial Bus Rapid Transit Project. But before we discuss HART's plans, let's talk about the technology itself, Bus Rapid Transit, also known as BRT. What makes BRT special? Why should we be excited about this? Because for a lot of people, it sounds like, well, it's just another fast bus.
Sure. So BRT is really exciting. And it's not just another fast bus. It is a fast bus. One of the best benefits of BRT is that we're trying to dedicate space for the bus to be in and getting it out of mixed traffic. For those of us that ride transit, it gets really frustrating when you're stuck behind another signal because you couldn't get to the bus stop that's on the near side of the intersection, or you're dealing with cars turning right in front of you, or having to weave around the bus when you're a driver looking to make a right turn down the road. So there's a lot of safety benefits for BRT as well. But the main driving kind of principle in my mind is we need to be able to count on our travel times during the busiest parts of the day. And right now we can't do that very effectively because we're in mixed traffic, and the biggest bottlenecks for drivers in our region are the same bottlenecks for our buses. So we build our schedules around that peak time of day where we have all of our buses on the road. And if we can't average more than 10 or 12 miles an hour per vehicle, then we have to put a lot of vehicles out there to maintain a frequent service. So by dedicating space and increasing our travel time from, say, 12 miles an hour to 18 or 20, we can run, say, a 30-minute route that has 6 buses on it. We can run that every 15 minutes with the same 6 buses. So it's a way to dedicate right of way to hopefully move more people, because you can put dozens of people on a bus and not in a car. So that's really the game changer. It's to make the bus operate more like rail, but it's still at grade through neighborhoods and helping get the bus up closer to those bottleneck intersections to get through in the least amount of time. And that's really how BRT can kind of change the game from a service delivery standpoint.
So let's talk about your BRT project itself. We refer to it as an arterial BRT project. Fill me in on some of the details, where it goes, what you're trying to do with it, and refer to it as arterial because it is feeding into the other HART service. I take it it's complementing the entire transportation network.
If you can imagine where I described the streetcar extension earlier on the Florida and Tampa one-way pairs in downtown, this BRT service would continue north on Florida Avenue, going all the way up north of Bush Boulevard, and then cutting over to Nebraska Avenue along Linebaugh, and then traveling again further north to Fowler Avenue, over to Bruce B. Downs and the University of Florida, and then terminating in the vicinity of the VA hospital, right between USF and our University Area Transit Center. And that's the alignment that we're now moving into the project development and environment phase to kind of hash out some of the details about how much of the guideway will be dedicated just to bus, how much of it will be allowed to permit right turning vehicles to use it, and then how close we can get to some of those bottleneck intersections. And that's kind of where it stands. One of our 4 busiest routes is the Florida Avenue Route 1, and that's pretty much on top of this corridor. So there's a couple of different ways that we could implement this project with or without the federal big transit funding drawdown. If we wanted to do something more short term, we may just modify the Route 1 to serve this alignment. But I think some of the most important things about this project are the accompanying study that Nicole McCleary is the deputy project manager of, and it has to do with transit-oriented development. So I'll let Nicole kind of expand on that.
I don't know if I'm the expert, but we are doing a TOD study. And this is a great study because it actually ties in the streetcar extension as well as the BRT arterial. So that's kind of our study area. And what we're looking at with the transit-oriented development study is really looking at different areas, different communities within the study area along that BRT arterial roadway and determining kind of where are the opportunities for development. And then getting input and feedback from our stakeholders about how they want to see their community grow or move forward, change. One of the things that what we want to come out of this study is really have some policy recommendations that they can then implement to determine the growth and really support transit within those areas. So we're looking at Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, the downtown core area, and they really do have very different economies. We really had to break them out into 5 separate sub areas and look at them each separately to determine what kind of opportunities there are for housing, commercial businesses, and then get feedback. We have a stakeholder work group and we meet every 2 months to kind of discuss, okay, this is what we found out in the area. This is what it looks like today. How can we shape it for tomorrow or the future? What are the opportunities that are available to us in those areas? And how will that support transit in this arterial that we know is growing and is used by the vast, well, I wouldn't say the vast majority, but a lot of people that use transit within that area.
It's very well said. And I want to double back a little bit, just talk about transit-oriented development itself. TOD, those of us who are in the transit field know what TOD is, but essentially, on one hand, you can say, well, people need to get from point A to B. We need to build a bus route or somehow get them there. With TOD, we're saying that transit runs hand in hand with the future development of our community. Let's not look to just meet a need of people, but let's look at how transit is going to enhance and complement how we expect our community to grow or how it can help grow.
Right. Yes, absolutely. We want to look at how can transit support the community, the area within. It's not just getting you from A to B, but what can we do around that station area that generates investment and local growth? So we definitely want to increase the value of those neighborhoods, really.
Are there any particular types of businesses that orient themselves to transit-oriented development? I mean, we think consumer level, you think Starbucks and things like that. Or are we also talking office buildings where people would work?
I would definitely say that depends on the community, the neighborhood. So we see in our downtown core definitely more commercial. As we move to Tampa Heights, it might be more mixed use development where you have restaurants, you have some sort of mixed type of housing developments and things of that nature. Other areas, it would be very service orientated where you might have dry cleaners or, very specific. This is one of the reasons why within that corridor, we ended up having 5 sub areas because they were just very vastly different in their makeup.
Is there a certain geographic area or segment of the population that you're looking to serve or feel has the most need for this arterial BRT project?
Well, I'll take a stab at it first, Justin, and then you could go. But I would definitely say we know that within the BRT study area, there are definitely areas of high minority, high low income. But then I would definitely say too that we're looking at commuters as well, people that are working at USF or going to school at USF and just want to get out there and don't want to be bothered driving. So there's definitely that population that needs to take the bus and the population that would choose to take the bus if it was efficient, convenient, and all of those things.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're always balancing, what's the best thing we can do for our customers today with how do we make transit more useful to everybody in the region and, in our service area. And I think that that's going to forever be the balance we're trying to strike. There's a lot of different pockets of very different types of communities along this corridor, which is something that the TOD study has really helped reveal, not only with the types of land use, but, the demographics across the corridor. One of the ways I like thinking about the service is while it's very important, we've always known in transit that connecting USF to downtown was the home run shot. It was just, how are we going to get there and what kind of mode is it going to be and all of that. But I've always thought that with this corridor, it's really about connecting the middle to one or the other. So if you say, if you're a young family maybe, and you want to move off the line, one of you works downtown, one works at USF, you've got a really good option to get to either one. So I think that that's one way to look at it. But really, it's about the predictability of travel times at the end of the day. And that's where the rubber, forgive the pun, hits the road with this.
It's appropriate. I'll let you have that. Sure.
But yeah, that's, there's a lot of different types of folks throughout the whole corridor, but you got to make it reliable for those people that are going to use HART every day and those that may use it a couple times a week. But that doesn't really change the fact that we need to make the service really good and consistent and reliable.
We're saying the same thing about TBARTA's proposed regional rapid transit, which is an expressway BRT project along I-275 connecting Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas counties. And just so our listeners are aware, these projects don't exist in a vacuum. I mean, we're all looking to connect with each other to make a regional transit network. We're tying into those FDOT intermodal centers just as HART is. The idea being that all of these services we put together complement each other to help you get around, not just in Hillsborough County, but regionally as well. And getting there quicker. As you know, it's got to be more efficient, faster. We'd be more productive if we can reduce our travel times, and certainly transit can help with that when it's well planned and well executed. I do want to talk about community engagement a little bit. We know that's a big part of any project. I know you've been reaching out to the community, not just to inform them on what you're planning, but also to get some feedback on your plans to say, hey, this is what we're thinking. This is where we want to go. What do you think? What type of feedback are you getting from the public? What are they telling us?
So we've been doing various types of outreach. So for the BRT project, in the early planning phase, we had several community-based events. A few of them ended right as the pandemic began, so that really threw a wrinkle into the last few meetings. But we've done a really heavy online push. And now we've just gotten through the service modification plan for January 21, which was very heavily online, which was a brand new course for us to take as an agency, which has been really interesting. And then, of course, Nicole with the TOD project has been fully online. So if she wants to add anything to that, but that's been a big progression for the agency. Getting turnout at these in-person events has been historically challenging.
Yeah, sure. So I would say definitely with our service modifications, we did a lot online. We did webinars in both English and Spanish just to try to make sure that we were reaching everyone that we could. We were definitely out at the transit centers talking to people, ensuring safety and distance, masked up, but definitely talking to people and letting them know about the service changes that were coming, asking them to comment, to call, let us know how they felt about them. I think it was a really, really strong effort, and it was well worth it because in our first round of just being out there and getting that public input, once we got that input, we were able to make some changes based on what we heard from the public. So I think that was great. And then with the TOD, initially, we were going to have some small groups and just kind of talk them through what was going on. And, initially they were supposed to be live, but with COVID, we went to online. So our first meeting, we invited 10 people and 2 showed up. The second meeting, we invited 10 people and 2 showed up. So we had to kind of pull back, re-strategize and do, okay, well, maybe we need to do an official, hey, we really want an official letter asking them to participate in this stakeholder group and, just sharing them more information about it uphand at first. And once we did that, it's been really successful. So as I said, they meet every 2 months. We go over what we've learned, kind of where we're going next, our next steps, and they will help us with determining the recommendations and so forth. So we meet with them every 2 months. It's definitely an open group because we know that as more people hear about the project, they might be more willing to participate in the group. So the group membership has not closed. We welcome all people and check out our website. Definitely. We have a gotod.org website. Check it out.
Those seem like best practices to follow for any community engagement. So congratulations on evolving and adjusting as you need to. We've all been there and done the same thing too. And keeping the community informed is increasingly important on all of these projects as we build them out. Where does the project stand right now? I mean, what's the next objective and hurdle? You say you're in the PD&E study, I guess, or we're about to enter PD&E. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to really flesh out the design of the guideway, determine if we have any environmental impacts along the corridor, and do some traffic analysis for how we're going to reconfigure some of the lanes and just kind of refine the concept further, do some due diligence on all those questions that all of us transportation professionals like to ask each other when these things are moving along. Hopefully we'll be wrapping up in probably the next 8 or 9 months, the PD&E, and hopefully we'll have also our funding figured out by then as well. Hopefully that'll be sooner than 8 or 9 months, or else I think we'll all be a little frustrated.
We're all anxious for transit solutions, there's no question, but these are major projects, major expenditures that really are not just going to impact how we move around in the next decade. They impact the development over the next century of how we're going to continue to grow. So they need to be considered carefully. Assuming this project stays on track, when do you think we could see HART's arterial BRT in service? Is there any year that you envision or are targeting?
Yeah, we've always kind of articulated it as streetcars a little bit ahead of us. So 25, 26 for the full BRT project. if we were to go with one of the smaller transportation system maintenance TSM alternatives, maybe modifying the Route 1, it could be just a few years before we have something up and running along the route. But for a full-blown federal project, that's definitely a 25, 26 timeframe.
Excellent. Very good. Well, I do want to move on now to alternative energy vehicles. And this is exciting because I know all transit agencies are looking into moving from the traditional diesel powered vehicle into a lot of these exciting technologies that are out there. HART is already making substantial investments in the transit of tomorrow. Just a few months ago, it was announced HART would be purchasing 4 electric vehicles. So let's talk a little bit about that project. Is this the start of electrifying HART's fleet?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that it is the start. So since 2016, HART's reduced its carbon footprint about 22%. And we've done that using CNG buses. So that's been great. So we were really excited when we were granted this FTA award for the Bus and Bus Facilities grant. And that will allow us to purchase 4 electric buses, but also to purchase the infrastructure, the charging stations as well, and then really set up our charging station at our maintenance facility. So we are definitely excited.
When we talk about alternative energy vehicles, there are a lot of different technologies. You touched on one right now. You said CNG. Help me understand, especially for any of our listeners who are not initiated, what CNG is and what the different technologies are that HART finds most interesting.
Okay, well, there's a few different technologies out there. CNG is compressed natural gas. It's one of the most common alternative uses for buses. We also have like liquefied natural gas, which is less common than the CNG. And then we have hydrogen as an alternative fuel. This can be derived from renewable sources like feedstock. But as Justin was saying earlier, sometimes the cost of getting it to you kind of delineates the actual cost of using that method, right? So some of the things that we are doing, like with the CNG buses, we know that it's improving our environment, right? It's improving the environmental footprint. We don't have a lot of those carcinogenic fuels that we have from diesel. With the electric vehicles, this is great because it has no fuel, really, no fuel impacts. So we're really trying to improve the environment, really trying to improve health of the people within the community, trying to get our bang for our buck. So the thing is, with the electric buses, you really need those charging stations and the quick charge station as well. Can we say that we're going to be 100% electric? We can't, because we know that there's limitations to how far the buses can go and where they can go. But what we can say is that HART is definitely trying to be responsible, environmentally responsible. We're definitely trying to improve the pollution in the area and definitely be a partner with that. So with this grant, TECO is our partner with this grant. And it's great to partner with them, that they're interested in helping us succeed and really improve our fleet. So we'll start with 4 and we'll see how many more we get to.
Well, I think it's a great start. And when we talk about these different technologies, I imagine they're each at different stages of development. So electric buses versus liquefied gas or CNG, their efficiencies are going to continue to develop, I would think, in the years ahead. Where do you think the industry is when it comes to alternative energy vehicles? It's not like, here they are, take your pick.
So for some of them, definitely. So I would say, like, for instance, the hydrogen, it's still developing. How do you reduce the cost to the consumer, right? That's something that they're still trying to work on. With CNG, we're always going to be improving it. With the electric vehicle, I think one of the big things that we're going to be looking for is, how do we improve the mileage? How do we improve that so that we can have more than 20% or 30% of our fleet electric?
So I think one of the answers is, just diversify your fleet as things change. And then hopefully you've got something good in your stock that's going to be improved pretty rapidly. But like Nicole said, keeping them charged is kind of a double-edged sword, because if we, those en route chargers are really important for the electric vehicles, because if you don't have one at the beginning of the route and one at the end of the route, then you have to do a complete trip to charge when you come back to your home point. But there's also a consideration: the batteries themselves are so heavy that if you have to go all the way back to the maintenance facility at the end of the day, then you're going to have way more batteries on the bus to stay charged out there for 8 or 10 hours. But if you have those en route chargers, you may be able to reduce the size of the batteries on the bus, making the vehicle lighter and more efficient, because you're able to charge it up during the day at the end of each trip. So those are the kind of interesting efficiency things from the operation standpoint and just day-to-day usage. So it's going to be really interesting for us to see. We are a sprawling metro, and the thing that really kind of scares our operations folks is the limited range of 150 miles. It's supposed to be getting better every year, but in 90-degree heat, when we're blasting AC, what is that going to do to our range? So we're just going to keep monitoring it, diversify our fleet, and see what the data says.
My last question when it comes to alternative energy vehicles would be, are you replacing diesel buses with diesel buses now?
So I would say right now we are replacing diesel buses with the CNGs. As opportunity arises and funds, resources show themselves, we'll definitely look towards purchasing more electric vehicles. So I would say the days of diesel for us are limited.
Well, our time is winding down here, but before we go, I would like to hear each of your thoughts on the future of public transit. There are a lot of exciting technologies out there. We've just talked about some of them, but there are also some unknowns. The full impact of COVID-19 on how we live and work is not yet clear. Where do you think we're headed, and what do you think we need to consider as we plan for mass transit in the decade ahead? Nicole, let me start with you. Any final thoughts you'd like us to consider?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the way we work and live is definitely changing. I know that younger people are less apt to drive themselves somewhere. So whether they're Ubering or taking public transit, they are definitely less apt to drive themselves somewhere. So I would definitely say that more people are choosing transit as a way to move around, especially if they know they can get there efficiently. I would say in the future, I would think that we'll see a lot more autonomous vehicles. We've also launched our first autonomous vehicle on the downtown Marion Transitway, so that's great. And then I would definitely say there's going to be an increase in mobility as a service. So someone might take the streetcar, then hop on the bus, then maybe Uber to get to where they're going. I think that's going to continue, so we need to prepare for it, definitely.
Very good. And Justin, your final thoughts on what lies ahead for us over the next 10 years or so in your profession?
For our specific region, we got to get back to basics and just provide frequent, reliable service. I think that the TOD study is helping us address the density issues that we have. 95% of the service area is probably single family housing. So bringing people to our service is really important. But I think it's to touch on the mobility as a service note that Nicole mentioned. It's providing a lot of different options for the same types of trips, right? If you can bike to the grocery store and then catch your bus home, or if you can walk or take a scooter, making modes seamlessly integrated, I think, is the big thing here. And I think that we've seen with the streetcar as an example, you make it free and it's frequent and it's reliable, people will flock to it. So I'm not sure if HART will ever go fare free, but I think that would be a big benefit and to a lot of the people that are, interested but skeptical. And why would they give up their free parking spot downtown to pay $2 to get in a bus? It's got to be really good service, and they've got to live fairly close to it to attract the riders to the system. I'm a huge bicycle person, so I don't always ride the bus, but I like to think that you can kind of be mode neutral and still provide a mobility freedom to everybody by having really good service out there. This 2-mile trip is probably, could either be free on a bus maybe, or $1 on a scooter. And then maybe, yeah, your Uber's $10. Or you can know that parking is going to be $4 an hour when you get there. So then we just try to incentivize the modes that we want to see people using that provide us the environmental benefits that we're all trying to achieve as a community.
Well, Justin, very well said. I appreciate that. Justin Willits, Nicole McCleary with HART, thank you for joining us today. Good luck on your projects. There's a lot of work to be done, but HART has always continued to progress and move forward. And that's certainly not changed despite this very challenging year. I am Chris Jadek. Thank you for listening. This is On the Go.